Hey, in this video, we are kicking off our PodHacker journey. So I'm going to walk you through each of the 4 steps and what you're going to learn, why it's so important to follow this journey. Let's just get into this thing. Alrighty, so we are here and we are about to start the PodHacker journey. And what you've probably seen already is this dashboard looking something like this. And where we want to focus right now is the top left corner, this thing we're calling the PodHacker journey. Big in red, start here. We have cultivated this journey for you because it is the 80-20. It is the most important principles that we've found when it comes to podcasting and running a successful business on the back end of your podcast. So through this whole journey, there's 4 distinct steps that we're going to go through that I'm going to walk you through in this big old map, which I just want to show it to you now. So these steps that we're talking about, which you're going to follow along with, are the build, engage, amplify, and monetize sections of the PodHacker journey. Now, what you're going to notice is that there are things that live outside of this journey. So there are other advanced learning modules and things you can go through, a lot of templates and resources and, all the group calls, the expert sessions, the community. But for this time, what we want to do is really hone in here on the journey, because this is something that most podcasters really don't focus on and really understand. It's connecting all the pieces together. So I'm going to walk you through the journey and what you're going to achieve, the objectives, the activities you'll be doing for each stage, and then also the result, what you're going to get out of going through this journey at each phase. Because you don't need to complete the journey to actually get a lot of results. You're going to see how we're going to kind of compound efforts along the way. We're just going to stack upon each building block that we're building along the way, which ironically, we're starting with the build phase. So right over here, the objective for the build phase is we're going to launch the systems to support your podcast and your business. So, the activities and the things you're going to do there are things like your initial podcast setup. So you might be saying, hey, I'm a podcaster. I've already been doing this a while. Well, that's cool. Just check this out and make sure to go through this, because there's likely a couple holes that you might have in your current podcast setup, your system, and maybe even the business, how it attaches to making money and growing this thing. So we urge everyone to go through this process no matter what skill set you're at, because likely you're going to find something you're like, ooh, I missed that one. So we want to go back and just make sure you're going through all of these phases. So we're going to talk all about the systems that you need to set up the podcast to either launch a brand new show or to optimize something you already have. We're talking all about the outreach and the scheduling. So this is all of those automated systems that you set up that will support you when you have a new guest, and it'll do all the reminders and all that stuff that preps them to be the best guest for you so you can conduct the best interview and then, of course, have the best podcast. All that comes from doing the work up front in this build phase. Then we're talking about recording, publishing, and we go deep into the processes for each of those. Then we talk about some of the really interesting things that a lot of podcasters skip or miss. The nuances are the website, and the show notes. So for each episode, we have a very detailed structure of what really allows us to grow our podcast and also grow our email list. You can see that this is actually going to be a big piece of it that happens alongside of building the website and these show notes out. So during this build phase, we're going to talk a lot about the tech and the systems and the things that are happening. They might not sound like, the sexy part of podcasting, but it's absolutely crucial. This is the foundation of everything you do. So then the result of completing this build phase is that you're going to have your podcast launched, or at least if it's launched already, you're going to have this optimized launched podcast. And you're going to have all the systems that allow you to happily create content. And I want to emphasize the word happily, because a lot of podcasters, they're not happily creating content because there's a lot of rushing, or there's missed things, or sometimes it's an obligation to keep up with the schedule. None of that's going to happen for you once you complete the PodHacker journey. So it's very crucial to nail down this build phase. So once you've gone through all the steps and the modules inside of the build phase, you're then going to move over into the engage phase. And this is all about building a great community, but also getting the great guests. So we have a system to bring in guests and actually automate referrals to you and introductions to you. So we're going to do that by, some of these activities down here. The Dream 100 strategy is a very unique process that we have created and adapted from some previous, models that are out there. And we'll explain this in the modules, but you'll see how this strategy alone will automate the introductions that come your way. So it's something that a lot of people ask us, how the heck are you getting all these amazing guests, these big name folks, or these hard to reach people? It's all using this Dream 100 strategy. And you'll notice once you actually implement this, you're going to have an influx of people being introduced to you. If you execute this strategy, this is going to take a lot of the legwork of actually finding people for your podcast because they're going to be introduced to you instead. It's really cool. So outside of the guest side of things, we're going to talk about Facebook groups. So how we create our group and the specific elements that are involved in the group to make it highly engaged. And then, of course, we're going to talk about how to engage those folks. So we're going to talk about the different ways we're posting, the schedule of posting, the way we engage with these folks, and the structure of these posts. All that stuff is going to be detailed in great detail in this engage section here in these modules. So then at the very end, the result is you're going to be a networking machine. You're going to have this podcast system dialed in on many fronts where you're getting introductions, and then you're going to have the systems from the build phase to support the influx of people that you'll have. And then, of course, you're going to have the systems to execute all this stuff and then have an amazing community that actually your listeners will then turn into your best evangelists. These are the folks that actually spread the word of your show, of your brand, of your community, of your episodes, of your, they'll introduce guests to you. It's really, really, really interesting. So in this engage phase, this is before we, dump gasoline on your podcast and really grow it. We want to complete this stuff first. Of course, we want to have the systems over here from the build phase. And then we want to have the engage section, all of these aspects dialed in before we start to grow the downloads of our podcast. We want to make sure that we can actually support the new listeners that come in. So that's why it's important to complete, not only the build phase, but also the engage phase. And then once you've gone through this step, we move on to amplify. And this is the section that a lot of people ask about is, hey, how do I get more listeners? So we're actually going to show you tons of strategies on how to growth hack your podcast growth so you can attract more listeners. And we're not just talking any listeners, but the right listeners for your show. You're going to do that through a whole bunch of steps. So the activities and the modules that you'll learn about are things like launching a contest. We have a unique way of going about that. There's a bunch of ways to promote on social media and all the different networks out there, the platforms. We have specific strategies and systems to do that. And then we have the guests, so a lot of folks will hinge on their guests to promote their episodes. That's great. We have a unique strategy and a way of looking at that will incentivize them further in a good way, in a nice win-win approach where they're really going to be pumped up to share. So you want to definitely go through this because that's a strategy that will consistently be happening within your podcast, system here. And then going on into here, we talk about going on other shows, so guesting on podcasts. We have a great strategy for that, not only to get more attention, but also to grow an email list and sell on the back of each one of your appearances. And of course, it's going to grow your podcast. Then we have ways to run ads in apps, and these are podcast listening apps. You can actually growth hack your way to a bunch of downloads very quickly by using strategic ads in the right places. And we'll talk deeply, we'll have a bunch of strategies about that. And then, of course, emailing. So emailing your new list, and you'll have an email list set up by going through the systems. You'll have, an initial community that's really engaged. And then, of course, we want to engage the email list and tell them about episodes and then incentivize them to share. We're going to show you exactly how we do that. And then, of course, the result of going through the Amplify phase is all about attracting more loyal listeners at ease. And again, I want to stress the at ease and loyal listeners because those are the ones that then turn into more evangelists for you. And, that's just going to help you really amplify everything you're doing. Again, it's all built on the previous sections, these modules over here. Now, the very fourth step, this is the monetize section. It's the one that most people want to learn about is, how do I make money from a podcast? So this one we've done a lot of talks on, and it's interesting because not a lot of podcasters have done this well. They don't really connect the content to making money. And that's the missing link. And that was really what a big motivating factor was to actually create the PodHacker course or membership in this whole journey. So during this monetized phase, we're talking about how to create the systems and launch the systems to actually make money from your podcast. And what we're going to do is show you how we do it. So we have a membership, a paid membership on the back of our podcast, and it has a physical newsletter a component to it as well. You don't need to do the physical part of it, but we're going to explain how that is so very beneficial to keep your folks engaged. It's unique. It's a great way to make some revenue on the back of your podcast. And these are your super fans. These are the ones that are going to stick with you for a long time. So, throw Patreon away and all that stuff. You want to control your own revenue. And we're going to show you exactly how we do that. We're literally opening the curtain to everything we're doing on how we make money from our podcast with our membership site. Then we get into affiliate marketing. This makes up for about 75-80% or so of our revenue. And it's an amazing way that anyone can use, any podcaster can use. And it's an extremely natural, it's like an organic way that podcasters can make money because we're all inherently promoters. So we might as well make money off of promoting the cool stuff we like. So we're going to talk about how to do that ethically and also very profitably with affiliate marketing. So this is going to be a unique spin, and it's how we make the bulk of our revenue. And it has been the case for a lot of our clients going through PodHacker as well. So I think you're going to be really excited. And then sponsorships at the very end of it. This is, we do sponsorships in a very interesting way, and it's actually using bundling and a unique spin on how we present this to the sponsors that come our way. So we're going to dive deep on how we take the industry standard and basically crush that. It's like 10x the standard of what we would make with the way that we frame our sponsorship bundles. You're not going to want to miss this because it'll make dramatically more money, even with a lot less downloads. So the result of all this is that you're going to generate revenue directly from your podcasting efforts. Now that's something we did a survey to about 1,000 podcasters in the business space primarily. So you'd think that they would have some good money-making abilities. Well, only 10% of those were actually making any money. And then 10% of the 10% were the only ones making over $100 a month with their podcast. So there's a big need to figure out how to properly monetize, but also remembering that all of this is built upon each other from these previous modules. So again, it's so important to work your way from the left to the right and make sure you go through each one of these sections and actually complete every one of them before progressing any further. So gonna remind you here that it's all about the journey. The PodHacker journey is starting right now for you, and we absolutely recommend following each of the modules, every single one of them. And then when you're done with each of the videos or each module, because some of them are kind of text-based, you want to click the complete and continue button on the bottom. That's going to help you keep track of everything you're doing in this course. And please don't skip anything because it's just, you don't want to do that to yourself. Come on. So make sure you're tracking everything. It'll give you a little indication on the left-hand side if you've completed the module or not with the little green or red icon. So make sure that all of them are green, but you've actually, watched the course, of course. And then lastly, just to remind you, we do have advanced training modules outside of this PodHacker journey. They're going to go deeper, but we definitely urge you to not dig into those quite yet until you fully complete this PodHacker journey. It's totally important to complete this. It's like the foundation of everything you're going to do inside of the PodHacker membership. And then, of course, on the expert sessions and the Q&A calls and the community, everybody's going to go through the PodHacker journey. So this is a nice glue to everybody who's in the membership. So, we can all help each other. We're all here to support each other and lift each other up as PodHackers. So I just want to end this by saying, enjoy the journey. You are going to love it. And we're going to be here to support you along the whole way. So please reach out with any questions. Can't wait for you to get started. Let's go.